I never thought I'd be the kind of woman who would do something like this. My husband Josh found out everything about what happened with his college roommate Lamar, and now he's sleeping in the spare bedroom. 10 years of marriage hanging by a thread because of something I did when we were 21. Back then, I started visiting their dorm when I knew Josh had chemistry lab, dressed up just for Lamar. I told myself I wasn't really cheating since we never had actual sex, just fooled around. Behind Josh's back for months. I buried that secret for a decade until Lamar sent me a friend request last month. Now Josh knows how I betrayed him with his roommate while he was studying to build our future. The look in his eyes when he found those messages on my phone broke my heart. But was it really fair to throw away our whole life over ancient history? You know what's crazy? I never thought I'd be the type of woman to do something like this. I'm Nora, 35, and I've been with my husband Josh since we were 21. College sweethearts. That whole cute story everyone loves hearing at dinner parties. But there's this whole other side nobody knows about. Well, Josh knows now. God, the look on his face when I finally told him. Back in college, Josh was this super sweet, kind of shy guy. Not exactly Mr. Popular, but exactly what I thought I wanted. Stable, reliable, treated me like a queen. He was literally the second guy I ever dated. And yeah, we lost our virginities to each other. I used to think that was so special. And Josh definitely did. He'd always get this proud little smile whenever it came up around friends, like we had this pure thing nobody else had. He was studying engineering, always buried in textbooks while I was doing communications. We'd meet between classes, study together in the library, do all those cutesy couple things that make everyone else roll their eyes. I really did love him. That wasn't fake. But looking back now, I can see I was also a little bored sometimes, though I never would have admitted it then. Everything changed senior year when Josh moved in with Lamar. Talk about opposites. Lamar was everything Josh wasn't. In this super popular fraternity, wealthy parents who paid for everything threw the best parties. Everyone wanted to be around him, girls especially. There were always rumors about how he was, really well equipped. I pretended I wasn't interested in all that gossip. Acted like I was above it. Josh loved that about me, how I wasn't. Like other girls falling all over Lamar, he'd tell his friends, Nora's different, she sees through guys like Lamar. And I'd smile and nod, playing the role of the mature girlfriend. Truth is, I was curious. Like, really curious. Every time some girl at a party would whisper about hooking up with Lamar, I'd act disgusted but secretly hang on every word. Was it really that impressive? Was he really that good? I started finding excuses to stop by their dorm when I knew Josh had that long chemistry lab on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I started wearing cuter outfits those days too, but told myself it was just because I had more time to get ready those mornings. Just dropping off Josh's textbook or just needed to borrow his notes, whatever would sound normal. Lamar always answered the door with this knowing smile that made my stomach flip. He'd invite me in, and I'd sit there pretending I was just waiting for Josh while we talked. He flirted constantly, and I pretended to be annoyed, but loved every second of attention from this guy all the other girls wanted. Sometimes he'd accidentally sit too close on the couch or find reasons to touch my arm when making a point. I never moved away. I told myself I was just being friendly with my boyfriend's roommate. Normal stuff, right? Except normal doesn't include the way my heart raced whenever he'd accidentally brush against me, or how I started dressing cuter on days I knew Josh wouldn't be there. I wasn't planning anything bad, I swear. It just felt nice to have someone like Lamar interested in boring old me, to feel desired by someone so different from Josh, someone exciting. The first time anything happened, I convinced myself it was a mistake. Lamar had been drinking, said something about how Josh didn't deserve a girl like me, and next thing I know, we're kissing. I pushed him away and left, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. That night with Josh, I felt so guilty, but also excited, like I had this secret thrill running through me. I should have stopped visiting when Josh wasn't around after that, but I didn't. Josh never suspected a thing. Sweet, trusting Josh who thought I was just being nice to his roommate. Instead, I started showing up more. I'd text Josh from the library saying I was studying late, then head straight to his dorm knowing Lamar would be there alone. We'd talk for hours, And he'd tell me all these wild stories about his hookups, his family's vacation homes, all this stuff that was so different from my basic life with Josh. It made me feel special that someone like him wanted me around. Sometimes he'd play music I'd never heard before, introduce me to fancy drinks his parents shipped him, show me a whole different world. I kept telling myself nothing serious was happening. Just talking. Just flirting. Josh never had to know because it didn't mean anything, but I knew exactly what I was doing every time I knocked on that door when Josh wasn't home. I just didn't want to admit it to myself. I'd check my makeup in my compact mirror right before knocking. Who was I kidding? Looking back now, I see how I was setting everything up, putting myself in these situations where something could happen and then acting surprised when it did. I wasn't some innocent victim here. But that's not how I saw it then. I saw myself as this good girlfriend who just happened to be in over her head with this irresistible guy who kept pursuing me. Way easier than admitting I was actively seeking him out, right? What's really messed up is how I compartmentalized everything. With Josh, I was this perfect, loyal girlfriend. With Lamar, I was this whole other person. Flirty, adventurous, willing to take risks. I guess part of me liked having that secret side Josh never saw. Makes me wonder if I ever really let Josh know me at all. The first time it happened for real was about a month after the kissing. I showed up wearing this cute little outfit, knowing Josh wouldn't be back for hours. Lamar answered the door in just basketball shorts, no shirt, like he'd been working out. I still remember how dry my mouth got. We were sitting on his bed watching some stupid movie when he just straight up asked if I'd ever seen what everyone was talking about. Just like that. I played dumb at first, but we both knew exactly what he meant. I told myself I was just going to look. Seriously, that's what I said in my head. I'll just see if the rumors are true, and that's it. But one thing led to another. And before I knew it, I was doing something I had barely even done with Josh. The rush was insane. Not just because of, well, the obvious, but because it was forbidden, because it was Lamar, because I knew I shouldn't, because it felt like I was living some alternate universe version of my life for just a little while. Afterward, I swore it would never happen again. I cried in the shower that night, feeling like the worst girlfriend ever. Josh texted me about how much he loved me while I was literally washing away evidence. I typed back, "I love you too," and meant it, which is the most twisted part. I really did love Josh. Still do. That's what makes this whole thing so confusing. It wasn't about not loving Josh enough. It was about wanting something else alongside that love. Something exciting, dangerous, different. But then Tuesday came. Around again, and there I was knocking on their door. It became almost routine. Josh's lab days turned into my secret time with Lamar. Sometimes we'd just talk and hang out, which almost made it worse, like we were actually dating or something, but usually it ended the same way. I got weirdly good at switching between the two of them. I'd have lunch with Josh all innocent and sweet, then be with Lamar hours later, then meet Josh for dinner like nothing happened. Sometimes Josh would talk about Lamar, about something funny he said or did, and I'd nod and smile like I didn't have these secret moments with him. I never let Lamar do anything beyond oral stuff. That was my line. In my messed up logic, that meant I wasn't really cheating. Cheating. Ridiculous, right? But that's how I justified it. We never had actual sex. Became my mental get-out-of-jail-free card. Like that would make Josh hurt any less if he found out. And honestly, I think Lamar liked that arrangement too. No strings, no real relationship responsibilities, just fun when Josh wasn't around. We never talked about feelings or futures. It was just physical. Just this secret little world we created twice a week while Josh was in lab. The weirdest part? I started getting almost resentful of Josh. Like it was somehow his fault that I was sneaking around. I'd think things like, if he were more exciting like Lamar, I wouldn't need this. So backwards. I was creating this whole narrative where I was unsatisfied when really, Josh was exactly who I signed up for. I was just greedy, wanting both the stable, loving guy and the thrill of someone forbidden. Sometimes I'd get irritated with Josh for being so predictable, so steady, the very things I claimed to love about him. poor guy had no idea why I'd suddenly get moody for no reason. When graduation came around, Lamar and I just stopped. No big dramatic ending. He was moving to New York for some fancy finance job his dad set up. I was staying local with Josh. We kind of nodded at each other at graduation like it had been fun. But now it was over. I threw myself into building a future with Josh like nothing had happened. We moved in together, got engaged a year later, had this beautiful wedding where I genuinely felt like the luckiest girl alive. I convinced myself college was college. Everyone does stupid things, right? That chapter was closed. For 10 whole years, I never thought about it. Okay, that's a lie. I thought about it sometimes, but I buried those thoughts deep. Josh and I built a good life. We've got 2 kids now, a mortgage, the whole suburban dream package. He's been the perfect husband, honestly. Steady job, helps with the kids, still brings me coffee in bed sometimes. I've had a decade to appreciate that Josh was always the right choice. The stability, the partnership, the family we've created. Lamar could never have given me that. And I was happy with my choice. Really, I was. But then last month, this friend request pops up on Facebook. Lamar. My heart practically stopped. His profile picture showed him looking even better than college. Obviously rich, still in amazing shape, living in some fancy downtown condo. I told myself I was just being polite when I accepted it. Just curiosity about what an old friend was up to. It's not like I was planning to do anything inappropriate, just catching up with someone from my past. I didn't tell Josh about it. Not because I was planning anything shady, but because, well, how do you casually mention accepting a friend request from the guy whose anatomy you were intimately familiar with behind your husband's back? So I kept it to myself, just scrolled through his photos when Josh wasn't around. Vacation pics in Bali, some charity gala where he's in a tux, a new sports car with the dealership bow still on it. His life looked exactly like I imagined it would. Glamorous, exciting, free, everything my suburban mom life wasn't. I told myself I was just window shopping, not actually considering buying. Then the private messages started. Lamar messaged. First. Hey, stranger. Long time. Something so simple shouldn't have made my heart race like that. Before I knew it, we were messaging daily. Started innocent enough, catching up on life. But it didn't take long before he brought up our study sessions. That's what we used to call them as our little inside joke. He asked if I ever told Josh. I said no. He said he wasn't surprised. There was this rush of being back in that secret world again, like no time had passed at all. I found myself checking Facebook constantly, waiting for his messages, coming up with excuses to be on my phone, making sure to delete the message history every time, planning my replies when I should have been focusing on work or the kids. I told myself it was harmless nostalgia, just 2 old friends reconnecting. But I was lying to myself again, just like in college. There were moments when the kids were asking me questions, and I barely heard them because I was thinking about what to say to Lamar. Josh would talk about his day, and I'd nod along while my mind was elsewhere. I was physically present, but mentally cheating all over again. Josh noticed. Of course he did. He's always been more observant than I give him credit for. You're on Facebook a lot lately, he said one night while we were getting ready for bed, casual, but his eyes were suspicious. I brushed it off, said something about reconnecting with old college friends. Technically not a lie, right? But I started being more careful, only checking messages when he wasn't around, waiting until he was in the shower or had taken the kids to soccer practice. Just like in college, I was creating these little pockets of secrecy within our marriage. Then Josh walked in while I was messaging Lamar one night. I had stayed up late, told him I was just catching up on some show. Really, I was waiting for him to go to bed so I could message Lamar freely, but he came back downstairs for water and there I was, smiling at my laptop screen. I panicked and closed the laptop, which was the most guilty thing I could have done. Josh isn't stupid. He asked who I was talking to that I needed to hide. We had our first real fight in years. I deflected, got defensive, accused him of not trusting me, the whole time thinking how ironic it was that his suspicions were completely justified. I actually had the nerve to tell him he was being insecure and controlling, gaslighting him when He was absolutely right. The next morning, he apologized for overreacting. I felt like garbage. Here he was saying sorry when I was the one messaging an old hookup behind his back. I promised myself I'd stop. Delete Lamar. Focus on my marriage. I really meant it this time. I even typed out this long message to Lamar explaining I couldn't talk anymore, but I never sent it. Kept it in drafts, telling myself I was just waiting for the right moment. But the right moment never came because I didn't really want it to. I didn't stop. The rush was too addictive. The secrecy, the little hit of excitement every time a new message came in. Sometimes, I'd catch myself thinking about how things might have been different if I'd chosen Lamar instead. Ridiculous fantasy stuff about the life I could have had. Traveling the world, fancy parties, none of the boring responsibility that comes with real adult life. Not that I'd ever actually want that life full time. I love my kids, our home, the life we've built. But there was something intoxicating about dipping my toe back into what could have been, even if just through messages. Then Lamar suggested meeting up for coffee since he was going to be in our area for business. For old time's sake, he said. I said yes immediately, no hesitation. Even started planning what I'd wear, what excuse I'd give Josh. That's when it hit me how far down this rabbit hole I'd gone again. History repeating itself. Only this time with so much more at stake. Not just a college relationship, but a marriage, a family, a whole life we'd spent a decade building. I deleted the message but didn't cancel. Told Josh I was meeting an old college girlfriend. Got all dressed up, perfume, the works. But as I was backing out of the driveway, Josh was standing there with my phone in his hand. I'd left it unlocked, on the counter while getting ready. The blood drained from my face. I knew exactly what he'd seen. All the messages, all the reminiscing about study sessions, all the planning to meet up behind his back, everything. "Who's Lamar?" he asked, his voice so quiet it scared me. Not yelling, not accusing, just broken. That's when everything fell apart. 10 years of marriage crumbling because I couldn't leave the past in the past, because I needed that thrill again, because apparently I learned nothing from the first time around. I tried denying it first, said he was just an old friend from a study group. Josh didn't buy it, asked why I was being secretive, why the messages were so flirty. He scrolled through more, his face getting darker with each swipe. "Seems like you two have history I don't know about," he said. He kept reading bits of messages aloud, asking what they meant, what study sessions was code for, why Lamar asked if I ever told my husband about them. My excuses sounded pathetic even to my own ears. I broke down, told him about accepting the friend request, the messages, planning to meet up, but stopped short of the college stuff. Call it self-preservation or cowardice, but I couldn't bring myself to destroy everything with the full truth. Not yet. I tried to paint it as just harmless flirting that got out of hand. That I got caught up in nostalgia but never intended to do anything. That it was just nice to feel desired by someone from my past. All technically true, but nowhere near the whole story. But Josh kept pushing. Said he knew there was more to it. Something about the way Lamar wrote to me, too familiar, inside jokes he didn't understand. He asked point blank if something happened between us in college, if Lamar and I had history before now. His eyes were so hurt, so confused. In that moment, I realized just how much damage I'd done. Not just now, but by keeping this secret for our entire relationship. I tried the partial truth. "He kissed me once," I said. I pushed him away, and nothing else happened. The lie tasted bitter in my mouth, but I was desperate to minimize the damage, to find some way out that wouldn't destroy everything we had. I actually thought I could still manage this, still control the narrative somehow. Josh just stared at me. That look, I'll never forget it, like he was seeing a stranger wearing his wife's face. "You're lying," he said. Not a question, a statement. "Tell me everything, now." So it came out. Not all at once. I tried to minimize at first. Okay, maybe we fooled around a little. Then, seeing his face harden, fine, I gave him oral a couple times. Josh just kept staring, waiting for more. It wasn't serious. It didn't mean anything. It was just physical curiosity. Each admission felt like ripping off a layer of the person Josh thought I was. The devoted girlfriend, the faithful wife, the honest partner, all facades crumbling with every word. "How many times?" he asked, his voice eerily calm. I said I couldn't remember exactly. Such a cop-out. Of course I remembered. Every single time. But saying about 15 separate occasions over 4 months seemed so much worse than, "I don't remember. It was so long ago." I tried to emphasize how young I was, how it was college experimentation, how everybody does stupid things at that age, as if that somehow made betraying him while he was in class any better. Josh went completely silent, then asked the question I was dreading. "Did you sleep with him?" I told him, "No, never." And that was actually true. That was my line, the thing that let me tell myself I wasn't really cheating. Josh didn't seem to find much comfort in that distinction. His face showed nothing but disgust and pain. I reached for him, but he stepped back like my touch would burn him. "Let me get this straight," he said. "You were regularly giving oral to my roommate behind my back while we were together. The same thing you rarely do for me even now after 10 years of marriage." That's when it hit me. I hadn't connected those dots before. Not consciously anyway. It was true. I'd been enthusiastic with Lamar in ways I almost never was with Josh. Not because I desired Josh less, but because, I don't know, maybe because with Josh it was a relationship with expectations and futures and feelings. With Lamar it was just physical. No strings, no judgment. I'd somehow reserved that part of myself from the man I claimed to love the most. What did that say about me? About us? But trying to explain that would only make things worse. So I cried instead. Said I was young and stupid, said it was college experimentation, said it meant nothing, and that's why I never told him, all the classic excuses. But even as the tears fell, I knew they weren't entirely genuine. They were partly for show, partly manipulation, partly genuine regret, but mostly regret for being caught rather than for what I'd done. If Josh hadn't found those messages, I'd still be planning to meet Lamar for coffee, and who knows what else. "Did he know about us?" Josh asked, suddenly. "What do you mean? Of course he knew we were together." "No," Josh said. "Did he know what you were doing with me? Did you talk about me to him?" I couldn't answer that because the truth was yes. Sometimes Lamar would ask, and sometimes I'd tell him. Sometimes we'd laugh about it. God saying that out loud would be the final nail. So I just stood there, unable to look Josh in the eye, and my silence told him everything he needed to know. Josh walked out of the room, and I heard the spare bedroom door close. He slept there that night and the next 5 days now. Barely speaking to me except about essential household stuff in front of the kids, keeping up appearances for them but treating me like a stranger when they're not looking. Every night I wait for him to come to bed, but he never does. I canceled meeting Lamar and blocked him on everything. Too little, too late. But what else could I do? I've apologized probably 50 times, reminded Josh it was over a decade ago, that I've been faithful ever since, that I chose him, built a life with him. I've tried everything, crying, reasoning, even getting angry that he can't get past ancient history. I've pointed out how good our marriage has been, how happy we've been all these years. Asked if he's really going to throw it all away over something that happened before we were even engaged. But I see how he looks at me now, like I'm contaminated, like every memory we've built is suddenly suspect. Yesterday he asked me something that broke my heart. Had I kept in touch with Lamar all these years? Was this really the first time we'd reconnected? I was telling the truth when I said yes, but the fact that he even had to ask killed me. Then he asked if there were others I hadn't told him about. There weren't. But again, the question itself showed just how completely the trust is gone. He's questioning everything now, re-examining our entire history through this new lens. The worst part? I still don't fully get why he's this upset. Yes, I messed up majorly, but it was just physical stuff, not an affair. It was in college, for God's sake, when everyone does stupid things. And it was so long ago. I chose him. I married him, had his children, built a whole life around us. Doesn't that count for anything? I'm starting to wonder if our marriage can survive this. Not because of what happened in college, but because of how Josh is reacting now. I mean, is he really going to throw away a decade of marriage, our children, our home, everything we've built over something I did when we were practically kids? Part of me thinks if he really loved me, he'd find a way to forgive me, to see that the good in our marriage outweighs one stupid mistake from my past, that the present matters more than ancient history. Part of me thinks he's being unreasonable. Another part knows I've never really seen the full weight of what I did through his eyes. To him, it's not just that I cheated. It's that I lied for our entire relationship, built our marriage on a foundation that wasn't fully honest. Let him believe I was someone I wasn't, and then compounded it all by reconnecting with Lamar now, showing him that maybe I haven't changed as much as I thought I had. But still, people make mistakes, especially college kids. If he really loved me, shouldn't he be able to forgive this, or at least try? Yesterday, I overheard him on the phone with his brother, talking about not being able to look at me the same way, like I'm suddenly a different person because of something that happened when we were 21. I wanted to grab the phone and scream that I'm still me, still the woman he married, still the mother of his children. That one mistake doesn't erase everything else I am. I don't know what's going to happen to us. I want to save our marriage, but I can't force Josh to see this my way. Can't make him understand that it was meaningless physical stuff, not some grand betrayal. Can't make him grasp that the girl who did those things isn't really me anymore. Or at least I thought she wasn't until Lamar's friend request made her come rushing back so easily. If he would just talk to me instead of shutting down, maybe we could work through this. But he won't even try. Just keeps saying he needs space to process. How much space does one person need? It's been almost a week. At some point, he has to decide if our marriage is worth fighting for, right? He can't just hide in the spare bedroom forever. We have kids who are starting to ask questions about why daddy's sleeping in the other room, why mommy's been crying, why the house feels so tense. I made a mistake, a big one, but I'm not going to spend the rest of my life paying for it. If Josh can't move past this, then maybe we weren't as strong as I thought we were. Maybe we're just two people who've been living in a fantasy, and now reality is crashing down around us. All those perfect family photos on Facebook, all those anniversary posts about soulmates and forever. Maybe they were just pretty lies we told ourselves and everyone else. All because of a stupid Facebook friend request and something that happened a lifetime ago. It's not fair. None of this is fair to him, to me, to our kids. I just want my life back. Want to erase the last month and go back to when things were simple. Before Lamar, before the truth, before Josh looked at me like I was a stranger. Is that too much to ask? It's been 2 weeks now. 2 weeks of this cold war in our house. Josh finally approached me last night after the kids were in bed. He looked exhausted, like he hasn't been sleeping. I probably don't look much better. We need to talk, he said. Not about getting past this or moving on, about what happens next. My heart dropped. The way he said it made it clear this wasn't going to be the reconciliation conversation I'd been hoping for. We sat at the kitchen table, the same place we've had countless family dinners, signed our mortgage papers, helped the kids with homework. Now it felt like a negotiation table. I've been doing a lot of thinking, Josh said, his voice steady but distant. And I need you to understand something. This isn't just about what you did in college. I know it's about the messages too, but I've blocked Lamar. I swear I won't ever talk to him again. No, Josh cut me off. It's deeper than that. It's about the foundation of our entire relationship. He explained that when he thinks about our college days now, everything feels tainted. All those memories of us studying together, planning our future, talking about how special our relationship was, how different it was from everyone else's hookup culture, they were all lies. While he was in chemistry lab working toward our future, I was in his bed with his roommate. Do you have any idea what that feels like? He asked. To realize the story of us, the one I've been telling myself for 15 years, was fiction? I tried to argue that it wasn't fiction, that I really did love him, that those moments were real. But he just shook his head. You let me build my life on a lie, Nora. You took away my ability to make an informed decision about who I was marrying. That hit me hard. I'd never thought about it that way before. I'd always seen my secret as protecting him, protecting us. But Josh saw it as stealing his agency, his right to choose whether to stay with someone who'd betrayed him that way. "Would you have married me if you knew?" he asked. I couldn't answer that. I wanted to say yes, of course he would have, but I honestly don't know. And Josh took my silence as the answer it probably was. When I was deciding whether to propose to you, to commit my life to you, I made that decision without all the facts. You let me do that. What kind of love is that? I started crying then, not the manipulative tears from before, but real ones, because for the first time I was seeing this through his eyes. The foundation of our marriage, the story we built it on, was cracked from the beginning. I did that. But still, I argued, didn't the past decade count for something? Wasn't our family, our life together, worth fighting for? That's why I'm here having this conversation instead of already gone, Josh said. But I can't just move past this. I need to know if I can ever trust you again. And I need you to really understand what you did, not just be sorry you got caught. He laid out his terms then. If there was any chance of saving our marriage, I needed to commit to complete honesty about everything, starting now. Individual. Therapy for both of us. And eventually couples counseling if we got that far. And time. He needed time to decide if he could rebuild trust or if it was permanently broken. I can't guarantee we'll make it, he said. But this is the only path that has any chance. I agreed immediately. I would have agreed to anything. But Josh made it clear this wouldn't be quick or easy. He didn't want performative remorse or rushed promises. He wanted real change, real understanding. And one more thing, he said as he was leaving the kitchen. I need to know you get that this isn't an overreaction on my part. This isn't me being dramatic or punishing you. This is me having a normal human response to discovering my entire marriage is built on deceit. The next morning, I called a therapist. I felt ridiculous explaining why I needed an emergency appointment, but the receptionist had probably heard worse. First session was scheduled for Friday. Josh is still in the spare room. We're still barely talking except about practical matters and in front of the kids. But at least now there's a plan, a path forward, even if it's a hard one with no guaranteed outcome. My first therapy session was brutal. I walked in expecting sympathy, validation, maybe some strategies to help Josh get over this faster. Instead, I got hard questions. Why did I feel entitled to have both the security of Josh and the excitement of Lamar? Why did I think I deserved to have everything while Josh got a sanitized version of me? Why was I still minimizing what I did? Calling it just physical when the betrayal ran so much deeper? I left feeling raw and exposed, but also like maybe, just maybe, I was starting to understand the depth of what I'd done. I hadn't just cheated physically. I'd built our entire relationship on a fundamental dishonesty. When I got home, Josh was playing with the kids in the backyard. He looked up when I came out, and for a second I saw a flash of the old Josh, the one who used to look at me with nothing but love. Then it was gone, replaced by that guarded expression I'm growing to hate. How was it? He asked later after the kids were in bed. Hard, I admitted. She didn't let me off easy. Good, he said, not meanly, just matter-of-factly. Then he asked if I was going back. Next week, I said. And every week after that for as long as it takes. He nodded and went back to his book. A tiny gesture, but it felt like the first crack in the ice between us. Josh started his own therapy the following week. He doesn't tell me much about it, and I don't ask. That's part of our new boundaries. We're both doing this work for ourselves first, not just to save the marriage. The kids know something's wrong, of course, they're not babies. Aiden, our 7-year-old, asked me directly why Dad was sleeping in the other room. I fumbled through some explanation about how sometimes grown-ups need space, but I could tell he wasn't buying it. Maya, at 5, is less verbal about it, but more clingy, like she's afraid one of us might disappear. We agreed to tell them a simplified version of the truth, that Mommy and Daddy are working through some adult problems, that we both love them very much, and that no matter what happens, they will always be our priority. I wanted to promise them we'd stay together, that everything would go back to normal, but Josh insisted we couldn't make promises we might not be able to keep. By the 3rd week, Josh and I established a new routine. We're civil to each other. share parenting duties fairly, even occasionally have dinner together with the kids. It's all very mature and responsible, and completely empty of the warmth and intimacy we used to have. I miss him. Not just physically, though, there's that too. I miss our inside jokes, the way he'd wink at me across a room full of people, the casual touches as we passed each other in the kitchen. All gone now, replaced by this careful, polite distance. My therapist, Dr. Chen, says I need to sit with this discomfort, that the pain I'm feeling now is necessary for growth, that I can't expect Josh to comfort me through the fallout of my own actions. She's also helping me dig into why I did what I did, both in college and now. It's not as simple as being bored or wanting excitement. There's something deeper about my need for validation, my fear of missing out, my habit of compartmentalizing different parts of myself instead of being whole. The hardest sessions are the ones where we talk about how I rationalized everything, how I created these arbitrary rules like that oral sex wasn't really cheating, that let me do what I wanted while still thinking of myself as a good person. How I've been doing that my whole life in different ways. 6 weeks in, Josh agreed to our first couples therapy session. Dr. Harper's office was neutral territory, a place where we could start to talk about us without the kids potentially overhearing, or the history of our home pressing in around us. The session was awkward at first. We sat on opposite ends of the couch, both tense. Dr. Harper asked us to share what we hoped to get from therapy. Josh said he wanted clarity on whether he could trust me again, whether our marriage was salvageable, or if we should focus on becoming effective co-parents. I said I wanted my husband back, our family intact. Those are outcomes, Dr. Harper noted. What's the work you're willing to do to get there? That question stumped me. I'd been so focused on the end result, on getting back to normal, that I hadn't really thought about the process. What was I willing to change? How far was I willing to go to rebuild trust? Josh, on the other hand, was clear. He wanted complete transparency, not just about Lamar, but about everything. He wanted to understand why I did what I did, not to excuse it, but to assess whether the underlying issues could be addressed. And he wanted me to understand, really understand, what my actions had done to him. I need to know if the person I thought I married ever really existed, he said, his voice catching slightly. Or if she was just a character you played. That question has haunted me ever since. Who am I, really? The dutiful wife and mother? The secret thrill seeker? Both? Neither? I don't even know anymore. After 2 months of therapy, both individual and couples, things between Josh and me are changing. Not healing, not yet, but shifting. The cold politeness is giving way to something more complex. Sometimes there's anger, which is actually an improvement over the emptiness. Sometimes there are moments of real connection when we talk about the kids, or even occasionally laugh at the same thing. But there's still this gulf between us. Josh hasn't moved back to our bedroom. He still gets that distant look in his eyes. Sometimes, and I know he's thinking about me and Lamar, imagining things no one should have to imagine about their spouse. I've been completely transparent, as agreed. I show Josh my phone whenever he asks, though he rarely does anymore. I tell him where I'm going, who I'm with. I've deleted all social media for now, a decision my therapist supported. Not as punishment, but as a way to focus on what's real and present in my life instead of curated highlights and what-ifs. The hardest part is that I still don't know if we're going to make it. There are days when I see glimpses of the love we used to have, when Josh will look at me with something other than hurt or suspicion. And there are days when it seems impossible that we'll ever find our way back to each other. Dr. Harper says that's normal, that healing isn't linear. You're both grieving, she told us in a recent session. Josh is grieving the relationship he thought he had, and Nora, you're grieving the person you thought you were. That hit home. I am grieving who I thought I was. The good wife, the loving mother, the ethical person. Now I have to face that I'm capable of deep deception, of hurting the person I love most, of putting my selfish desires above our family's well-being. But maybe, Dr. Chen suggests, this is an opportunity to build a more authentic version of myself. One who doesn't compartmentalize, who doesn't need validation from harmful sources, who can be present and whole in my marriage instead of always looking for something more, something else. 3 months after Josh found the messages, we had a breakthrough of sorts. We were in Dr. Harper's office discussing trust when Josh said something that stunned me. "I'm not sure I ever really knew you," he said. "And maybe that's partly on me. I had this idea of who you were, this perfect image, and I never looked deeper, never asked the hard questions. Maybe I didn't want to know." It was the first time he'd taken any share of responsibility, not for my actions but for the dynamics between us. I started crying, both from relief that he was seeing nuance and from sadness that we'd been missing each other for so long. "I didn't let you see me," I admitted. "I showed you what I thought you wanted, kept the messy parts hidden. I thought that was what love was, being your perfect match." We talked more that session than we had in months, really talked, about how we'd both been playing roles instead of being real with each other. How I'd been afraid of losing his love if he saw all of me, and how that fear had created the very situation I was trying to avoid. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a step toward understanding. And for the first time, I felt like maybe, just maybe, we could build something new from the ashes of what we'd lost. Not the same as before, but potentially stronger for being authentic. That night, Josh and I sat on the porch after the kids were in bed. We didn't talk much, just sat side by side watching the stars. But when I got up to go inside, he reached for my hand. Just for a moment, a brief touch, but it felt like the first green shoot after a forest fire. "I don't know if I can ever forget," he said quietly. "But I'm trying to understand." It wasn't a promise that we'd make it. It wasn't forgiveness for what I'd done, but it was something, a start. And for now, that has to be enough. The work continues, hard and painful, but necessary. I don't know what the outcome will be. I don't know if Josh will ever fully trust me again, or if we'll find a way to rebuild our marriage on a foundation of truth instead of illusion. But I do know that whatever happens, I'm finally facing myself honestly. The good and the bad, the loving mother and the selfish betrayer, all the parts I kept separated for so long. It's terrifying and liberating all at once. And maybe that's the silver lining in all this darkness. Maybe by breaking what we had, I've created space for something real to grow in its place, whether that's a new version of our marriage or two whole people who can co-parent with integrity, even if they're no longer together. Either way, I'm committed to the process, to the work, to becoming someone worthy of trust, whether Josh ultimately gives me that chance or not. Because I've finally realized that the person I need to be honest with first and foremost is myself. 4 months into therapy, Josh and I had what Dr. Harper called a defining conversation. It wasn't scheduled or planned. It happened on a random Tuesday night after the kids were asleep. I was loading the dishwasher and Josh was wiping down the counters, our silent choreography of separate but parallel lives. "I keep thinking about what you said in therapy last week," Josh said suddenly. "About how you compartmentalized your life even before Lamar. How you've always shown different sides to different people." I nodded, uncertain where he was going with this. "It made me wonder if I ever really knew you at all," he continued. "And then I realized something that scares me. I'm not sure I ever really let you know me either." I stopped what I was doing and turned to face him. This wasn't at all what I expected. "What do you mean?" "I think I've been playing a role too," he said slowly. "The steady, reliable guy. The one who never questions, never rocks the boat. I created this image of us as the perfect couple with the perfect love story, and I never looked deeper because I was afraid of what I might find." It was the most vulnerable I'd seen him since this whole nightmare began. Not angry, not hurt, just raw and honest. "I'm not excusing what you did," he added quickly. "That's still on you. But I've been thinking about why neither of us felt like we could be fully ourselves with each other. What does that say about our marriage, even before all this happened?" We talked for hours that night, really talked. Not about Lamar specifically, but about us. About how we'd both been performing roles instead of being real. How I'd hidden parts of myself that I thought would disappoint him, and how he'd suppressed questions and doubts to maintain the perfect image he wanted to believe. "I put you on a pedestal," he admitted. Expected you to be this perfect wife who would never want anything I couldn't give you. That wasn't fair either. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't even acceptance. But it was a crack in the wall between us. A glimpse at something we might be able to build if we were brave enough to be honest with each other. The next day, I told Dr. Chen about our conversation. She wasn't surprised. This is often what happens in cases like yours, she explained. The infidelity is like an earthquake that exposes fault lines that were already there. The question now is whether you can rebuild something stronger on that shaken ground. 6 months after Josh discovered the messages, he moved back into our bedroom. Not because everything was fixed, he made that clear, but because he was tired of sleeping in the spare room and because he thought it might be good for the kids to see some normalcy returning. We established new boundaries, no phones in the bedroom, regular check-ins about how we're feeling, a commitment to bring up issues as they arise rather than letting them fester, and most importantly, a promise to be authentic with each other, even when it's uncomfortable or unflattering. Physical intimacy returned slowly, tentatively. First, just sleeping in the same bed again, then occasional touches, hand-holding. Our first kiss after everything felt new, awkward in a way it hadn't been since we were college students. The first time we made love again was surprisingly emotional. There were tears, not just from me, but from Josh too. Afterward, he held me, close, and whispered, "I'm still choosing you. Every day, I'm choosing to try." 7 months in, we had our biggest setback. Josh found an old photo album from college while cleaning out the garage. There we were, smiling at the camera, arms around each other. And there was Lamar in the background of several shots. Josh didn't speak to me for 2 days after that. When he finally did, his voice was tight with renewed anger. "Do you have any idea what it's like to look at our college photos and wonder which days you were with him? Which smile of yours was hiding a secret? Which memory of mine is a lie?" I didn't have an answer for that. There was nothing I could say to take away that pain. Dr. Harper helped us navigate through it, encouraging Josh to express his anger fully, rather than bottling it up, and helping me learn to sit with his pain without becoming defensive. "Healing isn't linear," she reminded us. "There will be setbacks. The question is whether you can work through them together instead of letting them drive you apart." After that episode, Josh asked me something that caught me off guard. He wanted to know exactly when each encounter with Lamar had happened, to match it with his own memories of those days. Part of me wanted to refuse, to say it would only hurt him more to know, but I'd promised complete honesty. So I told him. Dates, times, circumstances. It was excruciating for both of us. But afterward, Josh said something I didn't expect. "Thank you for telling me the truth. Now those memories are mine again. Not perfect, not what I thought they were, but real. I needed that." 8 months after Discovery Day, as we'd come to call it, we took our first weekend trip without the kids. Just 2 nights at a bed and breakfast in the mountains. We were both nervous, unsure what to expect, what was expected. The first night was tense. Without the buffer of the children and our daily routines, we were suddenly face to face with all the unresolved questions between us. Would we ever fully trust each other again? Was the new relationship we were building strong enough to last? Were we staying together for the right reasons, or just because it was easier than breaking apart? "I'm still angry sometimes," Josh admitted, as we sat on the porch of our cabin, watching the sunset. "I don't think that will ever completely go away." "I understand," I said, and I did. "I'm still ashamed. That doesn't go away either." "But I'm not only angry," he continued. "And I hope you're not only ashamed, because that's not enough to build a life on." He reached for my hand then, held it gently. "I need to know if there's more between us than our history and our children. I need to know if we still choose each other, knowing everything we know now." I looked at him, this man I'd hurt so badly, this man who was trying so hard to find a way forward. "I choose you," I said, not because it's easier or because of the kids or because I'm afraid of being alone, but because I love the person you are, not just the role you play in my life. He nodded slowly. "I think I'm starting to choose you too. Not the image I had of you, but the real you. Flawed, complicated, capable of both love and betrayal. Just like me. It wasn't a fairy tale moment. There was no dramatic declaration that all was forgiven, no promise that things would ever be the same. But there was a quiet acknowledgement that maybe, just maybe, we were building something real this time. The second night was better. We talked about the future cautiously, not making grand plans, but discussing possibilities. What might our relationship look like a year from now? 5 years? What did we want to model for our children about resilience, forgiveness, and accountability? I want them to know that people can make terrible mistakes and still find their way back to what matters, Josh said. But I also want them to understand that actions have consequences, that trust once broken is never quite the same. I want them to know that honesty is harder than lies but worth it, I added. That being authentic, even when it's messy, is better than being perfect on the surface and hollow underneath. We returned from that weekend changed, not miraculously healed, not free from doubts or occasional anger, but somehow more solid, like we'd each taken a step forward on uncertain ground and found it held our weight. 10 months after discovery, Josh and I graduated from weekly couples therapy to monthly check-ins. Dr. Harper congratulated us on our progress, but reminded us that the work was ongoing. You've built a stronger foundation, she told us in our last regular session, but maintenance is forever. Keep talking, keep being honest, keep choosing each other actively rather than passively. I've continued with individual therapy. There's still so much I'm learning about myself, about why I made the choices I did, about how to be whole instead of compartmentalized. Josh sees his therapist occasionally too, though less frequently now. The kids have noticed the change in our household. The tension that pervaded everything for months has lifted. We laugh more, touch more, talk more. Aiden asked me recently if Daddy was still mad at me. I told him that grown-up relationships were complicated, that people can be hurt and still love each other, can be healing and still have scars. But, are you and Daddy okay now? He persisted. I thought carefully before answering. We're working on being okay, I said finally. And we're doing it together, which is the important part. 1 year after Josh found the messages, we renewed our vows. Not publicly, not with a big ceremony, just the two of us in our backyard with the kids as witnesses. We wrote new promises to each, other ones that acknowledged our imperfections and the work we'd done to find each other again. Josh promised to see me fully, not as an ideal, but as a real person with strengths and weaknesses. To create space for honesty even when it's uncomfortable. To choose trust as an active practice rather than a passive expectation. I promised transparency, integrity, and the courage to be authentic even when it's frightening. To honor the second chance we've given our marriage by never taking it for granted. To remember that love is not just a feeling but a daily choice. The kids didn't understand much of what we said, but they understood the significance of the moment. Maya threw flower petals she'd collected from the garden. Aiden solemnly presented us with the rings we already wore. Afterward, Josh took me aside. I want you to know something, he said quietly. I don't regret staying. Even with all the pain, all the work we've had to do, I believe we have something now that's real in a way it wasn't before. I felt tears spring to my eyes. I don't deserve you, I said. He shook his head. That's not how this works. It's not about deserving. It's about choosing and being chosen every day with open eyes. That night, as we lay in bed, I asked the question that had been circling in my mind for months. Do you think you've forgiven me? Josh was quiet for a long moment. I don't think forgiveness is a finish line you cross once and you're done, he said finally. I think it's something you practice, like gratitude or patience. Some days it's easier than others. Some days I still get angry or sad thinking about what happened. But yes, I'm practicing forgiveness. And most days, I'm successful. It wasn't the unequivocal yes that the old me would have wanted, the one that needed everything to be perfect and complete, but it was honest. And I've learned that honesty, even when it's messy or uncomfortable, is worth more than comforting fiction. Our marriage isn't perfect now. We still have hard days, triggers that bring up old pain, moments of doubt. But we're facing them together, with our eyes open, neither of us hiding behind the roles we used to play. Lamar sent me another friend. Request 6 months ago. I showed it to Josh immediately, then declined it with him watching. Not because I don't trust myself, though that trust is still being rebuilt day by day, but because we've both learned that healing requires boundaries. I sometimes wonder what would have happened if Josh had never found those messages, if I'd met Lamar for coffee that day, if we'd gone on living in the comfortable lie we'd built. Would we have been happy in that shallow way people can be when they're not looking too deeply? Or would something else have eventually cracked the facade? I'll never know. And strangely, I'm grateful for that. Grateful that we were forced to face the truth, painful as it was. Grateful for the chance to build something authentic from the ruins of what we thought we had. Josh still has moments when the pain resurfaces. I'll catch him looking at me with a shadow crossing his face, and I know he's remembering. But those moments are fewer now, further between, and they no longer freeze us in place. We've learned to move through them, to acknowledge the hurt without letting it define us. As for me, I'm still learning to be whole, to bring all parts of myself into my marriage instead of compartmentalizing. To be passionate and adventurous with my husband, rather than seeking those feelings elsewhere. To face my fears of being truly known and still loved. It's not easy. There are days when the shame still catches me off guard, when I look at the life we've rebuilt and can hardly believe I risked it all for something so meaningless. But those moments, too, are part of the journey. Dr. Chen says that genuine growth comes from integrating our shadow sides, not pretending they don't exist. I'm trying to do that, to acknowledge the part of me that was capable of deception and betrayal without letting it define who I am or who I can become. Josh and I aren't the same people we were before this happened. The innocent trust is gone, replaced by something more conscious, more deliberate. We see each other more clearly now, with all our flaws and complexities, and somehow, miraculously, we still choose each other. That's the thing about real love I've discovered. It's not about finding someone perfect or being perfect yourself. It's about being fully seen, fully known, and still chosen. Still valued. Still loved. We have that now, in a way we never did before. And while I would never have chosen this painful path to get here, I can't regret where it's led us. To a marriage that's authentic. To a love that's tested and proven resilient. To a life that's real, with all its messiness and pain and beauty. One night, as we were falling asleep, Josh whispered something that I hold on to on the hard days. Thank you for fighting for us, even when I wasn't sure we were worth fighting for. I turned to face him in the darkness. We were always worth fighting for. I just didn't know how until I almost lost you. He pulled me closer then, and I felt the steady beat of his heart against mine. Not perfect, not unmarked by pain, but real. And somehow, against all odds, still ours. 18 months after Discovery Day, I found Josh sitting alone on our back porch late one night. The kids were asleep, and I'd assumed he was working in his home office. Instead, he was staring out at the darkness, a glass of whiskey untouched beside him. Hey, I said softly, sitting down next to him. Everything okay? He didn't answer immediately, and I felt that familiar twist of anxiety in my stomach. We'd been doing so well lately. Had something happened? Had he found something else? I had lunch with Mike today, he finally said. Mike was Josh's oldest friend, someone who knew about everything that had happened between us. And? I prompted when he didn't continue. He asked me if I was really happy or just settling. Josh turned to look at me then, his eyes searching mine. He said he couldn't understand how I could stay with someone who did what you did. Said if it were him, he'd never be able to get past it. My heart sank. This was what I'd always feared. That outside opinions would make Josh question the progress we'd made, the new relationship we'd built. What did you tell him? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Josh was quiet for a long moment. I told him that staying was the hardest decision I've ever made, that there are still days when I question it, but that leaving would have been choosing certainty over possibility, and I wasn't ready to do that. He reached for my hand then, held it gently. I told him that what we have now isn't what we had before, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. That sometimes you have to burn everything down to build something that will last. Relief washed over me. And how did he take that? Josh laughed softly. He thought I was crazy. Said I should have left the day I found out. But he's not in this marriage. He doesn't see what we've built from the ashes. I squeezed his hand, grateful beyond words for this man who had chosen the harder path when it would have been so much easier to walk away. Do you ever regret staying? I asked, the question that still haunted me sometimes even after all our progress. Josh considered this seriously, as he always did. No, he said finally. I regret that we had to go through this fire to find each other authentically. I regret the pain, but I don't regret where we are now. 2 years after Discovery Day, Josh received a promotion that would require us to relocate. A bigger job, in a new city. The kind of opportunity he'd been working toward for years. He came home with the news, excited but also apprehensive. It would mean starting over, he said. New house, new schools for the kids, but also a clean slate for us. No one there would know our history. I understood what he was really saying. This move could be symbolic as well as practical, a fresh beginning for our family. A place where we weren't Josh and Nora who almost broke up that time, where neighbors and friends hadn't witnessed the worst months of our lives. What do you think? He asked when I didn't immediately respond. I think it sounds perfect, I said, and meant it. A new chapter. The move was chaotic, as moves always are. Packing up a decade of family life, finding a new house, helping the kids process their mix of excitement and anxiety about leaving their friends. But underneath the stress was a current of anticipation, of possibility. Our new home was nothing like our old one, a deliberate choice we made together. Different architectural style, different layout, different feel entirely. No ghosts, no memories, just blank walls waiting for new ones. The night after the movers left, Josh and I stood in our empty living room surrounded by boxes, exhausted but satisfied. Welcome home, he said, pulling me into an embrace. It feels right. I replied, leaning into him. Like we were meant to be here. Not meant to be, he corrected gently. We chose this. We're choosing it every day. That distinction between passive destiny and active choice had become central to our marriage. Nothing was taken for granted. Anymore, nothing assumed. Every day was a conscious decision to continue building together. The kids adjusted to their new schools more quickly than we'd anticipated. Aiden made the soccer team within weeks, and Maya fell in love with her art teacher. They still asked occasional questions about why we'd moved, but seemed satisfied with our explanation that Daddy's new job was a great opportunity for our family. Josh and I found a new couples therapist in our new city, not because we were in crisis, but as preventative maintenance. Dr. Patel had a different approach than Dr. Harper, more focused on communication, tools, and future planning than processing past wounds. It felt right for where we were in our journey, looking forward more than backward. 3 years after Discovery Day, I received a job offer of my own. A marketing director position at a nonprofit, more responsibility than I'd had before. A chance to use my skills for something meaningful. I was excited but hesitant to bring it up with Josh, worried about disrupting the careful balance we'd established. You should take it, he said immediately when I showed him the offer letter. It's perfect for you. But it would mean longer hours, more responsibility. With you traveling more for your new position, we'd need to figure out childcare and scheduling. And we will, he interrupted. We'll figure it out together. This is important to you, so it's important to me. I searched his face for any sign of resentment or concern, but found only genuine support. Another gift I hadn't expected from this journey, Josh seeing me fully as an individual with dreams and ambitions of my own, not just as his wife or our children's mother. Thank you, I said simply. He smiled. Remember when you used to worry that I only saw the parts of you that fit my image of the perfect wife? I think we're past that now. 4 years after Discovery Day, we faced our biggest test since the initial crisis. Josh had to travel to New York for a conference, the city where Lamar lived. He'd avoided it for years, always sending colleagues in his place, but this time he couldn't delegate. "I want you to come with me," he said when he told me about the trip. "Not because I don't trust you, because I want to replace old associations with new ones. I want New York to be about us, not about him." I agreed immediately. Arrangements were made for Josh's parents to stay with the kids, and we found ourselves in Manhattan on a crisp fall weekend. The conference kept Josh busy during the days, but our evenings were ours to explore the city together. We avoided the financial district where Lamar worked, a boundary we both understood without discussing. Instead, we created new memories in Central Park, at small restaurants in the village, walking the High Line hand in hand. On our last night, Josh suggested a rooftop bar with views of the skyline. As we sipped our drinks and watched the city, "Lights?" he said something that caught me off guard. I used to imagine him here, after I found out. I'd picture him in some penthouse overlooking the park, living this glamorous life that I could never give you. I'd wonder if that's what you were thinking about when you seemed distant or bored. I started to protest, but he continued. "I know, better now. I understand it wasn't really about him or about what he had that I didn't. It was about parts of yourself you didn't know how to integrate into our life together." I nodded, touched by his insight. I never wanted his life. I just wanted to feel something I thought was missing in mine. But it was never missing, just buried. Josh raised his glass slightly. "To finding what was buried." I clinked my glass against his. "And to building something new on the surface." 5 years after Discovery Day, I found myself sitting in Dr. Chen's office for what would be our final session. I'd continued with therapy longer than Josh had, working through deeper patterns that went beyond our marriage. After extensive discussion with both Dr. Chen and Josh, we decided I was ready to graduate. "How do you feel about ending our work together?" Dr. Chen asked as our session began. "Ready," I said with confidence that surprised me. 5 years ago, I wouldn't have believed I could be this person. Someone who doesn't need to compartmentalize or seek validation in harmful ways. Someone who can be whole and authentic even when it's uncomfortable. "What's the most important thing you've learned in our time together?" she asked. I considered this carefully. That integrity isn't about being perfect. It's about being integrated. Bringing all parts of yourself, even the messy or difficult ones, into the light instead of hiding them in separate compartments. Dr. Chen nodded. "And how has that changed your marriage?" "It's transformed it," I said simply. "Josh and I don't play roles for each other anymore. We're real, with all our complications and contradictions. It's harder in some ways than what we had before, but infinitely more valuable." As I left her office for the last time, I felt a sense of completion. Not that the work was over, it never really would be, but that I now had the tools to continue it on my own, with Josh as my partner. 6 years after Discovery Day, we celebrated our 16th wedding anniversary with a vow renewal ceremony. This time, it wasn't just the two of us in our backyard. We invited close friends and family, people who had supported us through the darkest days and celebrated with us as light returned. Standing before our loved ones, I looked at Josh and saw not the idealized husband of my youth, nor the wounded man of our crisis, but the real person I'd come to know and love more deeply than I ever thought possible. 6 years ago, he said in his vows, I thought our story was ending. I couldn't imagine a path forward through the pain. But what I've learned is that sometimes the greatest love stories aren't about perfect people who never hurt each other. They're about imperfect people who choose to heal together, who face their darkest truths and still choose each other every day. I couldn't hold back tears as I spoke my own vows. I stand before you today not as the person you thought you married, nor as the person who betrayed your trust, but as someone who has fought alongside you to build something true from the ruins of what we thought we had. I promise to continue that fight every day, to choose honesty over comfort, authenticity over illusion, and your trust over my fears. After the ceremony, as our friends and family celebrated around us, Josh pulled me aside for a quiet moment. There's something I've been waiting to tell you, he said, something I realized recently. I waited, curious about the smile playing at the corners of his mouth. I'm actually grateful for what happened, he said. Not for the betrayal itself, or the pain it caused, but for the wake-up call. Without it, we might have spent our entire lives playing roles for each other, never really knowing each other, never experiencing the kind of connection we have now. I understood exactly what he meant. It was a perspective neither of us could have imagined in those early days of devastation, but one that had gradually emerged as we rebuilt together. Me too, I admitted. Though I wish we could have found each other authentically without so much pain. Maybe some lessons can only come through fire, he said, pulling me close. The important thing is that we walked through it together and came out stronger on the other side. 7 years after Discovery Day, I ran into an old college friend who mentioned she'd heard about Lamar's divorce. Apparently, he'd been caught cheating with multiple women, his wife had left him, and his perfect life had imploded spectacularly. I chose not to share this information with Josh. Not because I was hiding anything, we'd long since established complete transparency, but because Lamar no longer had any place in our story. Whatever happened in his life had no bearing on ours. That night, as Josh and I prepared dinner together in our comfortable choreography, I was struck by a wave of gratitude so intense it almost brought me to my knees. For this man who had found the courage to stay when leaving would have been easier. For the painful journey that had brought us to this place of genuine connection. For the family we'd preserved and strengthened through our commitment to healing, together. What? Josh asked, noticing my expression. Just thinking about how lucky I am, I said simply. He smiled, the smile of someone who knows me completely, flaws, weaknesses, strengths, and all, and loves me not in spite of, but including all those aspects. Luck has nothing to do with it, he said, echoing a theme that had become central to our relationship. We chose this. We built it together, brick by painful brick. 8 years after Discovery Day, our anniversary fell on a Tuesday, a regular workday with school drop-offs and meetings and all the mundane responsibilities of family life. No big celebration planned, just dinner at home after the kids went to bed. As we sat across from each other at our kitchen table, candles lit, wine poured, I realized something profound. The extraordinary had become ordinary. The conscious choices, the intentional communication, the authentic connection we'd worked so hard to establish had become woven into the fabric of our daily lives. "What are you thinking about?" Josh asked, reaching for my hand across the table. "About how far we've come," I said. "About how what once felt impossible now feels like home." He nodded, understanding as he always did. "This is the real miracle, isn't it? Not that we survived the crisis, but that we've built a life beyond it. One that's richer and truer than what we had before." I thought about the young couple we'd been in college, playing roles for each other, hiding behind masks we thought would make us more lovable. I thought about the different paths our lives could have taken if Josh had never discovered my betrayal, if he'd chosen to leave, if we'd decided the work of rebuilding was too difficult. And I felt a deep peace knowing that we were exactly where we were meant to be, not by fate or destiny, but by choice, by thousands of small decisions to face the truth, to do the hard work, to choose each other authentically, day after day. "To 8 years of choosing," I said, raising my glass. "And to all the years to come," Josh replied, his eyes holding mine with the deep understanding that can only come from walking through fire together and emerging transformed on the other side.